Hello again. Thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja. Today I'm going to be talking about the DC animated movie Catwoman Hunted. Catwoman Hunted starts out as I feel pretty much the entire film should have just been, which was Catwoman crossing up some international criminals with a really expensive jewel heist. Catwoman is a thief. This would have been something to where, we showcase her at the height of her powers and definitely within her realm. The film turns Catwoman into a coerced agent working on behalf of Interpol against the organization that she just recently crossed, Leviathan. The story is serviceable. It was written by Greg Weisman, one of my favorite writers for film and TV, mostly TV. But for anyone who doesn't know, Greg Weisman is the writer and creator of the Disney series Gargoyles, one of my favorite urban fantasy series of all time. Really. Actually, kind of shoulder to shoulder with Buffy. And Buffy fans might think wait, what? No, it's hey, for me, that's how it is. Anywho, so she is forced to work with Interpol with the offer of an amnesty for several international crimes if she just takes them on head on. They try to turn her into something similar to a cross between a superhero and a super spy. I say super spy because we have to think in terms of Catwoman doesn't have much in the way of superpowers. She's extremely methodical and talented as a thief. She is very athletic, but aside from that, traditionally, most of the time for the character, if it's her going toe-to-toe with supervillains, well, that she's in trouble. The film supplements her involvement in all of this with assistance from Batwoman and Interpol. But unfortunately, Batwoman, even as the role of second banana, doesn't feel right. This felt like it probably should have been more of a Batwoman film rather than a Catwoman film. But with regards to this being a Catwoman vehicle, Catwoman as a character was not one of my favorite iterations of this particular character. Now, before I get too negative, and I'll continue my thoughts here a little bit moving forward, the film actually does have a lot going for it. It does have some exciting set pieces. The action scenes are fairly well choreographed and animated particularly well. There's a fluidity to the animation that I appreciate. It also has a nice sort of anime-esque look to it. I wish they kind of just had gone all in. When you first see the Warner Brothers logo, and then right beneath it are, I'm assuming, kanji for, the Warner Brothers as it would appear in a Japanese production, I felt that, okay, this is going to be like an anime sort of thing. And when it wasn't, it was kind of sort of anime in style and kind of sort of Western in style, like traditional DC animated universe sort of thing. So I wish they had kind of stuck to a particular style instead of halfway in between. But for the most part, it's serviceable. The coloring on the animation, it feels a lot like just a palette fill. There's very little shading throughout, and that takes away a lot from the dimension of those scenes. That being said, okay, I still feel that there's a good energy to it. There is a good amount of style. Particularly, my favorite aspect of the film is the music. Usually, there should be some sort of musical motif, and what we had with this film was jazz, and I really like that. I like this kind of bluesy sort of club jazz, very casual, very nonchalant, and I felt that pairs well with Catwoman. She's supposed to be calm and collected, when she's doing her heists or when she's outrunning Batman or whatever good guy is uh, like trying to catch her at the time. So I think Jazz, which I've never actually heard in relation to her, like even with Anne Hathaway as Catwoman in the third Chris Nolan Batman film, it was mostly with light strings, which does give a good impression for how lithe and sneaky, cat-like that she was supposed to be. But Jazz, I never really thought of that before, but it's a really good fit. So it has a decent runtime and pacing. It doesn't really take enough time to really collect itself and say, well, this is why we're doing this. But in an action film, yeah, that's actually a good, that can be a good thing. So good time and pacing, time-wise, it's just at feature length, debatably. It's about an hour and 18 minutes. That's what it says on the back of the box, but I'm pretty sure that that's also counting credits. That being said, still, decent pacing, decent runtime, really good music. I really appreciated the musical arrangement for the film. I thought that the action set pieces were actually they're fairly good. They're fairly good. They're fairly serviceable. So, Catwoman being the focus of this movie, being Catwoman. This is not one of the better iterations of this particular character. This version has a few key features, and I'm not entirely sure if there was. I cannot pretend to know the ins and outs of voice acting as a career. So I'm not entirely sure if, like, live action productions, you will have a script supervisor and someone to call a scene if they don't feel that an actor read a line properly that benefits the scene most of all. Now, this film was directed by a relatively new director, at least from what I've been able to ascertain, Shunsuke Terasawa. So maybe it's just, I don't know, that there was just something about the dialogue reads that always were prompted to be almost entirely flirtatious and aloof, but I really just didn't like that from the character. Usually Catwoman only acts flirtatious when she's trying to unbalance somebody, but in the midst of gun battles, sword fights, and fighting supervillains, you can calm it down with a bit. There's even a scene where Batwoman calls her on this shtick, and she's like, "Okay, you can knock it off." It's like, knock what off? And it just kind of comes off as annoying after a while. So when she's not being like breathy and flirtatious, she's acting as if nothing in the film actually matters. I understand she's being frustrated and inconvenienced because essentially she had her arm bent by Interpol saying, "Help us take down these super criminals or we're gonna arrest you." So okay, she just reluctantly, begrudgingly does this. But at the same time, she is facing assassins, sword masters, mutants. Jeez. She faces a plethora of supervillains, and she acts extremely detached and kind of almost snobbish and above it all. I understand Catwoman is supposed to be cool and collected, but if this character, if our main character in an action film is acting like they are never really in danger, that takes me out of the film. And it makes me sort of like, well, if you're not worried, then I'm not worried. John Wick doesn't act cool and relaxed when 3 dozen armed assassins are shooting at him all at the same time. He is on point because his life is in danger. That being said, I don't want to come off as overly negative about it, but I felt that the character could have been tweaked a little bit for the benefit of the film and really for the benefit of the audience, because just the way that she acted kind of apathetic to everything or flirtatious, even when she's being shot at, that bugged me. So that being said, there's some there's a good mix of positive and, for me, as a, just voicing my opinion on the main character herself, is like, it's a decent like mix of positive and negative. This is definitely one of the better DC animated films that I've seen recently. It's definitely not Batman Soul of the Dragon. Whew. So I could definitely say that with a straight face and a grin. But the character could have been a little bit more polished, or perhaps there could have been a little bit better direction for the character. Not entirely sure exactly how I would just pinpoint, oh, this could have been done just a little bit better. But the way that it plays out, for a majority of the film, it could have just been a Batwoman vehicle because of how things just play out at the very, very end. But yeah, so honestly, I'm willing to give it a solid 6 out of 10. This is something that, I think it has, you're watching it all the way through, and bearing in mind, I've watched this like 3 times just to make sure that, like maybe I'm a bit too harsh on something, but like no, the second and third viewings actually compounded my feelings towards the way that they portrayed the character of Catwoman. So I'm solid at a 6 out of 10. So, but yeah. So overall, it's still very serviceable. It's decent for what it is, and I think most people will actually have a lot of fun watching it. Even with my mixed feelings, this is a fun watch. To be honest, this was still fun. So, thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja. Have you guys seen the film? Do you have your own? What are your own thoughts on it? Please share in the comments below. Thank you very much once again for joining me, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.